Good evening. From the United States Capitol, the White House once again finds itself at the center of international attention. President Donald Trump has issued a sharp and unambiguous ultimatum to Hamas, setting a specific countdown for the militant group to respond to a new ceasefire proposal designed to end the long-running conflict in Gaza. The president's words, delivered in his characteristic direct style, have quickly reverberated across global diplomatic circles. Standing before reporters at the White House, President Trump declared that Hamas now has, in his words, about 3 or 4 days to accept the ceasefire terms. He emphasized that nearly all regional stakeholders have agreed to the deal, including Israel and what he described as all of the Arab countries, as well as the Muslim countries. Trump said the United States is just waiting for Hamas and warned that if the group refuses, it will mark, as he put it, a very sad end. The statement represents the latest in a series of high-stakes announcements by the US president, who has made Middle East negotiations a central focus of his foreign policy agenda. The ceasefire plan being proposed requires Hamas to fully disarm and removes the group from any future governing role in Gaza. According to US officials, these conditions are non-negotiable and have been endorsed by a broad coalition of Arab and Muslim majority states that have grown increasingly weary of ongoing instability in the region. The announcement arrives at a particularly tense moment. Months of clashes in and around Gaza have left many thousands displaced, with humanitarian agencies warning of a deepening crisis. Roads, hospitals and critical infrastructure in the enclave have been severely damaged. The United States has promoted the plan as a first step toward reconstruction, promising that a multilateral fund under United Nations oversight could pour resources into rebuilding Gaza's homes, schools and clinics, but only after weapons are surrendered and militant control is relinquished. Trump's delivery of the message carried a blend of urgency and finality. He framed the deadline as a test not just of Hamas's willingness to negotiate, but also of the region's readiness to turn a corner after decades of recurring conflict. Analysts point out that such a rigid timeline is unusual for diplomatic talks, which often extend over weeks or months. By imposing a countdown of just 3 to 4 days, the White House signals it wants to press Hamas into a rapid decision, potentially forcing a dramatic turning point in the conflict. Reactions were swift. In Washington, policy experts described the move as a high-risk, high-reward gambit. Supporters of the president's approach argue that prolonged negotiations in the past have produced stalemates, whereas a hard deadline may be the jolt needed to break through entrenched positions. Critics, however, warn that presenting an ultimatum can corner the other side and increase the chances of escalation if Hamas refuses to comply. Internationally, regional leaders have taken note. Several Arab League members, speaking on background to news agencies, indicated that they support the US plan in principle. They see an opportunity to stabilize the area and unlock economic cooperation that has been stalled by years of violence. Yet diplomats caution that persuading Hamas to accept conditions that include both disarmament and exclusion from political power will be an enormous challenge. Humanitarian organizations have been vocal as well. Aid agencies stress that for civilians in Gaza, the priority is the immediate cessation of hostilities and the delivery of food, water, medical aid and fuel for hospitals. They warn that any delay in securing a ceasefire prolongs the suffering of ordinary people. For these organizations, the political negotiations in distant capitals must not overshadow the urgent human need on the ground. The president's words have also resonated across media outlets. News channels in the United States and abroad led with the story of the ultimatum, highlighting the quote that Hamas faces a very sad end if it does not accept the ceasefire. Social media platforms have seen heated debate, some commentators praising Trump's determination to bring parties to the table, others decrying the deadline as potentially inflammatory and counterproductive. Observers familiar with the dynamics of the conflict note that the core demands of the ceasefire proposal, Hamas's disarmament and removal from governance, have historically been the greatest stumbling blocks in peace talks. Previous efforts by international mediators, including the United Nations, Egypt and Qatar, have tried to balance demands for security with the need for inclusive governance and humanitarian relief. The new proposal appears to double down on the security-first approach, hoping that by unifying regional powers behind it, pressure on Hamas will become overwhelming. Behind the scenes, US officials have been coordinating with intermediaries in Qatar and Egypt to relay the terms directly to Hamas's leadership. These countries have often served as crucial go-betweens in past negotiations, maintaining communication channels even when direct dialogue between the United States and Hamas has been absent. Reports from diplomatic sources suggest that these intermediaries are urging Hamas to take the proposal seriously, warning that refusal could result in further isolation and intensified military actions. In parallel, the Israeli government has reportedly endorsed the plan and expressed readiness to comply with the ceasefire terms if Hamas disarms. Israeli officials have publicly emphasized that the security of their citizens remains their primary concern, but acknowledged that a credible ceasefire could offer a chance to lower tensions and shift focus to rebuilding the region's shattered economy. On the streets of Gaza, however, the mood remains uncertain. Residents, many of whom have endured years of conflict and hardship, express cautious hope that a breakthrough might finally come, though skepticism remains high. They have witnessed previous negotiations collapse and fear that new promises may again lead to disappointment. Local voices repeatedly emphasize the urgent need for electricity, clean water and functioning hospitals, expressing frustration that political disputes have overshadowed these basic humanitarian concerns. Back in Washington, the administration has framed the offer as a rare opportunity, what one senior official called the last viable window to halt the current cycle of violence before the winter months bring additional suffering. Trump's close advisors have told reporters that the president views this as a defining test of his approach. Direct, deadline-driven and willing to hold parties accountable for their choices. Some analysts believe that if Hamas accepts the deal, it could open the door to broader regional cooperation and even the possibility of renewed dialogue on a longer-term two-state solution. Others warn that the exclusion of Hamas from governance, while appealing to many of its adversaries, could create a political vacuum that would be difficult to fill without careful planning and could lead to renewed instability. Meanwhile, humanitarian convoys wait at border crossings, hoping that the political developments will translate into practical improvements on the ground. International aid groups have made it clear that they are ready to scale up deliveries of food, water and medicine as soon as conditions allow. For them, every day without progress means more hardship for civilians caught in the crossfire. As the world watches the ticking clock, the next few days are set to be decisive. The administration insists that the timeline will not be extended, portraying the deadline as both a sign of resolve and an appeal for immediate action. Whether this approach yields a breakthrough or triggers further confrontation will depend on the response from Hamas, a group that has historically resisted surrendering its arms or relinquishing its political influence. In closing, the international community faces a moment of suspense. The United States has laid its proposal firmly on the table, backed by regional allies. Hamas now holds the power to either accept a path toward an immediate ceasefire and potential reconstruction, or reject it and risk the consequences of renewed or intensified conflict. The coming days will reveal whether the ultimatum marks the beginning of a turning point toward peace or another chapter of deepening crisis.
How long do you plan to give Hamas to respond to the ceasefire proposal you put out?
We're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries are all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
Do you have a